She was just a widow selling boiled yam by the roadside in Enugu until she gave away her last 500 savings to a crying schoolboy. She thought no one saw her, but someone did, and that changed her life forever. It had rained hard the night before, the kind of rain that left holes in the zinc roof and small puddles on the floor. Zara woke up early, her back stiff from sleeping on a mat with a torn edge. She folded the mat neatly, tied her wrapper twice around her waist, and lit the charcoal stove by the small window. "Mama, your feet are swollen again," her neighbor said from the next room. Zara just smiled. Rain makes old bones speak. Outside, the mud squelched under her broken sandals. She dragged her wooden bench to the usual spot near the corner of Ogbit Market. The air smelled like kerosene, roasted fish, and wet dust. By 9 a.m., her tray had 3 boiled yam slices left. She sat quietly, watching people rush by, students in half-tucked shirts, women balancing trays of oranges, and conductors yelling routes with cracked voices. Then she saw him, a boy, no more than 9. His uniform hung off him like borrowed cloth. He stood across the gutter, eyes fixed on her yam, but legs frozen in place. He didn't beg, he just stood there, biting the inside of his cheek. His toes poked through broken sandals. His elbow was ripped, exposing a thin brown patch of skin. Zara shifted. She opened her old tin box. Inside was a 500 note, all she had after buying firewood and salt for the week. She picked one piece of yam, added a ball of akara, and slowly wrapped them in yesterday's newspaper. Her neighbor hissed, "Mama Zara, don't. That's your last money. That boy isn't yours." Zara didn't reply. She tucked the 500 inside the wrap and crossed the road. "Take," she said softly. "Go, eat, and don't look back." The boy stared at her. No smile, no word, just watery eyes. He took the food like someone holding treasure, then ran. Zara crossed back. Her bench was empty now. The other sellers whispered among themselves. She didn't explain. That evening, Obina came home hungry from helping at the mechanic's yard. "Mama, anything left to eat?" he asked, wiping sweat off his brow. She shook her head. "Tomorrow, my son." Obina frowned, but didn't press. He knew better than to ask where the money went. Later that night, rain tapped gently on the roof. Zara lay on her mat, her belly empty but her heart warm. She touched her chest lightly, smiled, and closed her eyes. Obina stormed into the room, his shirt soaked with sweat and rain, his face twisted in frustration. The wooden door creaked loudly as he pushed it shut behind him. "Mama, I heard what you did," he snapped, dropping a torn nylon bag on the dusty floor. Zara didn't look up. She was crouched near the kerosene stove, stirring a small pot of ogi with a wooden spoon. The flame barely flickered, and the pot looked nearly empty. Obina paced the room, stepping around the puddle that had formed under the leaky corner. He yanked off his slippers, one of them already broken, and tossed them aside. "You gave away the 500 again?" he asked, louder this time. She exhaled, slow and soft. It was a little boy. He hadn't eaten. Obina stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. "Mama, I'm your boy. I'm your son. What about me?" Zara stood slowly, wiping her hands on her wrapper. She turned to face him. His eyes, tired, desperate, locked with hers. "I came back from the village to help," he said, voice cracking. "I sleep on a mat in someone else's shop. I eat gari with no sugar. I work all day changing tires and inhaling fumes. And you're here giving money to strangers." Zara took a step toward him. "I know what you've sacrificed. I see it every time I look at your feet, Obina. You wear broken sandals so I can feed others. You think I don't feel that guilt every day?" He looked away. His jaw tightened. She continued, her voice softer, trembling. "I gave that boy food because once, not so long ago, someone gave you food when I had none. You were crying outside the church, and one old man gave you rice. I remember that day." Obina's shoulders dropped a little. The fight in him dimmed. "Mama," he whispered, "you think that boy will remember you?" "I don't need him to," she said. They both fell silent for a moment. The only sound was the soft bubbling of the ogi. Obina sat down on the mat, stretching his legs, resting his head against the wall. He looked older than his years, dark circles under his eyes, blisters on his hands. "I just want us to have enough," he muttered. Zara knelt beside him. She pulled his tired feet onto her lap and began rubbing them gently. "We will, one day," she said. "But even now, I don't want to stop being who I am." He didn't speak again, but he let her continue. A few minutes later, she handed him the small bowl of ogi, thin, no sugar, but warm. Obina took it and sipped without a word. She watched him, watched his chest rise and fall, watched the little boy in him slowly return behind the tired man. When he was done, he placed the bowl down and leaned back. Zara turned her head toward the cracked window and whispered, almost to herself. The morning was soft with fog. Birds chirped lazily as the village slowly came alive. Zara lit her small charcoal stove with hands blackened from yesterday's cooking. Smoke rose gently, curling around her tired face like memory. She didn't speak, she just peeled. One yam, two, then a third. Obina sat by the doorway rubbing his sore ankles. Mama, that's too much yam, he said without looking up. You know we can't afford extra today. She didn't answer, just sliced thinner. Then she reached for the last of the beans from a rusted tin bowl and fried 2 spoonfuls in palm oil. Enough to add scent but barely flavor. She packed the mics into 2 small newspaper wraps. Adding in the steaming yam slices. Her fingers moved carefully. Like wrapping gold. She slipped a tiny note into each parcel, written on scraps of old exercise book paper. Eat well, learn more, pray hard. Then she tied the parcels tight with twine and tucked them into her faded blue wrapper. Mama, what's that for? Obina asked, standing now. Just something I forgot yesterday, she said quietly, already halfway out the door. He sighed and didn't follow. Zara walked down the muddy road, past the church with cracked windows and the half-finished pharmacy that had never opened. She turned right at the corner, toward the government school, the same one Obina once attended before the fees swallowed their dreams. She paused at the back fence, broken, overgrown, forgotten. No one was there. Not yet. She stooped, placing one bundle under a flat rock and the second behind a worn-out plastic drum near the mango tree. No one saw, no one asked, but in her heart, it felt like someone did. She turned and walked slowly back to her stall. Her bench waited under the same bent umbrella she shared with 2 other sellers. As she began roasting her own yam, she heard laughter across the street. 2 schoolboys ran past, one of them clutching the newspaper parcel with both hands, tearing it open like it was treasure. He sat near the gutter and devoured the meal, licking his fingers with joy that only the hungry could understand. Zara watched quietly. She didn't smile, didn't call him. She just sat and turned the yam on the fire with a stick. Later that afternoon, a market woman scoffed as she passed. Ah, Zara, the holy widow, feeding strangers when your son still wears torn trousers. Zara didn't reply. She just moved her yam off the fire and sprinkled salt slowly. Nearby, a pregnant woman dropped a small coin near Zara's bench. You helped my niece last week, she said softly. I saw you. Zara looked up. The woman walked away before she could respond. She sat back, watching the smoke fade. The day was dry, but the sky looked bruised, that grayish purple that warned of evening rain. Zara swept the space in front of her yam bench, clearing away broken sachets, palm kernels, and bottle tops left by passing schoolboys. She placed her stool beside the stone fire ring and adjusted the umbrella. Her faded wrapper bore light ash stains from yesterday's cooking, and her hand smelled faintly of palm oil. As she bent to light her charcoal pot, a black Toyota Prado SUV parked silently across the street. No sound, no movement, just the hum of the engine, low and steady like a sleeping lion. Zara didn't notice. She was too focused on keeping the fire going. But inside the SUV, a young man watched closely. His face, half lit by the sun breaking through his tinted glass, was unreadable. Stern eyes, clean suit, tie still tight though the day was hot. She's the one, he murmured. The driver turned slightly. Sir. The man leaned forward, resting his elbow on the window edge. That woman in the wrapper, that's her. He watched as Zara handed a roasted banana to a girl with a limp. No charge. He watched her help a blind man cross the road between kickhorns and careless Okada. She moved without needing thanks, as if kindness was routine. She reminds me of someone, he said, voice low. The driver didn't reply. He had seen his boss like this only once before, quiet, distant, pulled into something beyond business. Back across the road, Zara fanned the charcoal. Smoke rose gently around her, like steam from a spirit pot. She adjusted the yam pieces with a stick, checking for softness. A child came running past, bumping into her table. The bench rocked, but she caught it quickly. The child mumbled, "Sorry, Ma." Zara smiled and gave him a small piece of roasted yam. "Don't run with an empty stomach. The road will win." The child looked confused but happy. He ran off chewing. Inside the SUV, the man's expression changed. He rolled down the window slightly. The scent of roasted yam drifted in, smoky, earthy, real. He tapped his phone. "Get me everything on that woman by tomorrow," he said. "Name, where she lives, her family," quietly. The driver nodded. As the SUV pulled away slowly, Zara finally looked up, sensing something. The wind brushed her face gently. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the street. Empty again. A small shiver passed through her as she rubbed her arms. She turned to Obina, who had just arrived from the mechanic's shed, wiping his greasy hands. "Mama, you okay?" he asked. Zara nodded slowly. "Yes, just felt like the wind was watching me." Obina looked around. "No one's here." Zara smiled faintly. Exactly. It was early. The sun had barely stretched across the rooftops when Zara arrived at her spot. She placed her firewood in a circle, dusted the top of her stool with a faded rag, and unwrapped the leftover yam from yesterday to warm it over the flames. But today, something was different. Right on her bench, sitting perfectly in the center, was a white envelope, clean, uncreased, untouched by dust or wind. She froze. Her heart tapped against her chest like small footsteps. She looked around. The street was quiet, too quiet for a Thursday. The bread seller across the road hadn't opened yet. Even Josie, the gossip queen with her tomatoes and loud voice, hadn't arrived. Zara picked it up slowly. It was heavy. Her thumb ran along the flap sealed. She sat, then opened it. 50,000 crisp notes, stacked neatly, folded once. She blinked. Her hands trembled slightly. It was more than she made in 2 months. Then she noticed a small, square paper tucked inside. A single question: "Would you still give if you were the one in need?" Zara stared at the words for a long time, the kind of long that made even time feel nervous. Her throat tightened. The same boy she fed last week, the one who left without a word, flashed through her mind. Her son's cracked sandals, her roof that leaked when it rained, her unpaid church pledge. She folded the envelope again. Obina arrived just then, covered in mechanic grease, wiping his hands with a blackened cloth. He spotted the envelope immediately. "Mama, who gave you that?" "I don't know," she replied quietly. He crouched beside her. "It's money. How much?" Zara didn't answer. "Mama, please, if someone blessed you, then accept it. We need it." Zara looked into his eyes. He wasn't wrong. But that note. She stood up slowly, tied her wrapper tight, and slid the envelope into the inside fold of her blouse. "Where are you going?" Obina asked. "Church," she said softly. "To return what is not yet mine." Obina frowned. "Mama," she raised her hand gently to silence him. Some things didn't need explanation. The church was empty. Only the janitor sweeping near the altar noticed her walk in. She knelt, placed the envelope at the foot of the wooden cross. No name, no writing, no noise. Then she stood, made the sign of the cross, and walked out with her chin high and her hands empty. That evening, Josie finally returned to her stall. "Zara, I saw someone leave a parcel on your bench this morning. You get secret admirers now," she teased. Zara didn't respond. She stirred her pot slowly. Ngozi clicked her tongue. "You holy people are too proud to accept help. When hunger knocks again, don't come to me." "Oh." Zara only smiled and handed a roasted banana to a crying child nearby. It was a hot afternoon, the kind where sweat clings to your skin like wet cloth. Zara sat on her bench, fanning herself with a piece of cardboard, trying to keep flies away from the yam tray. The market buzzed around her, traders shouting prices, children running between stalls, plastic bags rustling like dry leaves. Obina had just left with a bag of kerosene for the stove. All felt normal. Auntie Josie's voice pierced the air like a broken horn. "She stole my plantains." Heads turned. Conversations froze. Even the goats near the gutter paused mid-chew. Zara looked up. "What?" Josie stormed over, hands on hips, sweat glistening on her forehead. "You think I didn't see you this morning? You came early, touched my mat, and took 3 A small crowd began to form. Curiosity spread like wildfire. People leaned in, eager for drama. Zara stood slowly. Her heart was racing. "I didn't touch anything of yours," she said calmly. And Josie scoffed. Ah, now she speaks with pride. You think your holy ways fool everyone, always acting like a saint. Giving food here and there, we see you. But today, I saw your hands. Someone from the crowd muttered, maybe she's not as clean as she looks. Another said, even poor people steal. Hunger has no shame. Lips parted, but no words came. Her hands, darkened from years of firewood and soapless scrubbing, tightened into fists at her sides. I came early today, she managed. Yes, to sweep under my bench like I always do. But I never touched your things, and Josie. And Josie folded her arms, voice louder now. Then, what was the banana in that boy's hand? You gave him something just now. Was it not mine? It was my banana, Zara said, voice lower, slower, trembling but firm. I buy mine from Kioma, not from you. Kioma, a fruit seller nearby, nodded. It's true. She bought 2 yesterday evening. But the crowd wasn't interested in truth. They were entertained. All of you always covering for each other, and Josie barked. You think she's special because she prays at the church. She's a nobody like the rest of us. Poor and pretending. Zara didn't respond. She bent down, opened her bag slowly, and showed the inside. Firewood chips, a hand towel, 2 bananas, and her prayer beads. No plantains. No proof of theft, but also no proof she hadn't. Silence followed. People shifted uncomfortably. A few backed away. Others stayed, still waiting for what? No one knew. Obina returned then, saw the tension, and walked straight to her. What's going on? Zara didn't explain. She simply handed him the bag. Look inside. Let them see. I have nothing to hide. He opened it, inspected each item, and raised his chin to the crowd. She didn't take anything, and Josie muttered something under her breath and turned away, pretending to fix her table. The crowd slowly dispersed, the show over, but the whispers didn't stop. That night, when Zara returned home, she sat on the edge of her mat and untied her wrapper. Her hands trembled, her eyes didn't. Obina sat beside her in silence. She hadn't cried, not once. The walk home felt longer than usual. Each step echoed in her chest, not because of pain in her legs, but because of the silence behind her. Not one person had stood up for her. Not one had spoken truth out loud. Only Kioma. And even that was swept away by gossip like dust in the wind. Zara's feet left faint prints in the dry earth. The sun had faded now, replaced by soft evening orange that painted rooftops and turned the muddy street golden. She reached their door and pushed it open. Obina followed closely, holding her bag. He placed it in the corner and stood awkwardly, unsure whether to speak or give space. Zara walked into the back room, the small, dim one with peeling paint and 1 kerosene lantern on the wall. She opened an old wooden box under the sleeping mat. Inside, folded with delicate care, was a wrapper, blue, patterned, slightly faded, and smelling faintly of camphor and charcoal. It was her husband's. She had kept it since his burial, untouched, except on days when she needed to remember who she was. She pulled it out slowly, ran her hands across the fabric. The pattern still strong, the seams still holding. She wrapped it around herself like armor. Obina stood at the doorway, arms crossed. I'm sorry, he said finally. Zara didn't look at him. She just sat on the floor, legs crossed, wrapper firm across her chest. I thought I was used to people's tongues, she whispered, but today, it cut different. Obina sat beside her. You should have defended yourself more. She shook her head, and become like them, shouting, pointing, throwing words, like stones. No, my son. The market hears noise every day. It never listens. But silence. Silence leaves questions. He stared at the lantern on the wall. They think you're weak. Zara looked at him now. Her eyes were calm, but firm like dry earth. Do you know what this wrapper is? She asked. Obina shook his head slowly. It was your father's, the one he wore when he built this house with his bare hands, when he went into debt for your school uniform, when he stood in rain, selling firewood with pride. This cloth holds more than fabric, Obina. It holds memory, sweat, sacrifice. He swallowed hard. You've never worn it before, because I only wear it when I need to remind myself who I am. Outside, a goat bleated. A baby cried in a neighbor's room. Life continued. The world hadn't stopped for her shame, but she hadn't crumbled either. Zara stood again, tall, peaceful. She walked to the doorway and looked outside. The moon was rising gently. The breeze had cooled. It carried with it a quiet sense of rebalance, like the day had settled its own scores. Obina stepped behind her. "You'll go back tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, same bench, same fire, same kindness." Obina smiled faintly. "I'll fix your umbrella tonight. It's starting to tilt." She turned, kissed his forehead, and whispered something that stayed with him forever. Zara didn't get up the next morning. Her mat was still laid, but she remained curled on one side, her head pressed against her arm, breath shallow. The night had been restless. Her chest ached. Her bones felt heavy. It wasn't just physical. It was the kind of tired that sits inside the soul. Obina stood over her with a bucket of water. "Mama, at least drink something," he whispered. She shook her head faintly. The small pot of ogi remained untouched. The coal stove sat cold in the corner. "You didn't do anything wrong," he added, his voice cracking a little. Zara whispered back, barely audible, "Sometimes being innocent doesn't protect you. It just hurts quieter." Obina blinked away his tears and stepped outside, unsure what else to say. Back at the market, her bench stood empty for the first time in weeks. The space beside it, normally filled with smoke and quiet kindness, now looked hollow. Some of the other women whispered, "She's hiding. I told you." Guilty conscience always needs sleep. But while gossip danced through the air, something else was happening across the road. A young man stepped out of a kick, tall, dark-skinned, wearing jeans and a neatly ironed shirt. He scanned the stalls until his eyes landed on the empty bench. He crossed the street, slowly. Some people stared. Without saying a word, he placed a white basket gently on Zara's bench. Inside, apples, oranges, a tin of milk, bread, medicine, and an envelope. A woman near the pepper cellar asked, "You day look for somebody?" He nodded. "She sells yam here. She no come today," the woman replied. "Wetin happen?" He smiled slightly. "I just came to say thank you." He walked away before anyone could ask more. Obina returned to the stall around noon, intending to tell Njosi to keep her mouth shut once and for all. Instead, he found the basket. He opened it slowly, eyes wide. There was a small folded note placed on top of the bread. "For the woman who fed my soul when my stomach was empty." Obina froze. He looked around, but whoever had left it was long gone. He took the basket home carefully, almost reverently. Zara was still lying down, her breathing slow. "Mama, someone came for you," he said gently, placing the basket near her mat. She turned her head, eyes half open. He helped her sit up slowly. She looked at the fruit, the medicine, the envelope, then the note. Zara read it, her lips moving silently. Her fingers gripped the path. Next morning, a soft knock rattled the wooden door just after sunrise. Zara sat up slowly on the mat, still wrapped in her husband's blue-patterned wrapper. Her bones ached less, and her chest felt lighter, as if the tears from the day before had washed away something that had been stuck for years. Obina opened the door and found a small girl standing outside, no older than 10, wearing a faded yellow uniform. "Good morning. Big man from the council say Mama Zara should come. Town hall. Now," she said quickly, before darting off down the path. Obina frowned. Town hall. Zara's heart skipped. She looked at her son, puzzled. "Did something happen?" He shook his head. "I don't know, but I'll go with you." She wore her neatest wrapper. Not new, but clean. She tied her headscarf in a careful knot and held her small leather bag close. Her hands were still rough, but she walked steady. They arrived at the town square 30 minutes later. The place was unusually full. Ngozi was already there, arms crossed and smirking. So were several other market women. Men from the council sat under the shaded canopies, papers in front of them. A microphone on the table at the back of the crowd. A black Prado SUV was parked again. Zara saw it. Her steps slowed. Obina gently touched her elbow. "I'm here." The council chairman stood as she approached the table. "You are Zara Yume?" he asked into the microphone. She nodded, unsure if her legs would hold. "We received a letter addressed to you, from overseas. But more than that, a large donation sent in your name." Gasps ran through the crowd. Zara blinked. "I don't understand." The chairman adjusted his glasses and pulled out a typed paper. He began to read aloud. "She gave me her last 500 when I was a hungry boy on the street. She didn't know who I was. She didn't ask for anything back. Today, I want to give her back the world." Zara clutched her wrapper. Her lips parted, but no words came. Obina stared, stunned. The people began to murmur. The chairman continued, voice louder now, proud. This letter came with a gift, 5 million, an offer to build a new food shelter in her name, and a scholarship fund under the name Mama Zara Foundation. And Josie's face twisted like unripe pawpaw. The microphone echoed slightly as silence took over. Zara looked at the crowd. Every face that had once judged her now watched her like she was a living legend. She held the table's edge to steady herself. "Who sent it?" she asked, voice trembling. The chairman smiled gently. "He's here." The SUV door opened. A tall man in a black suit stepped out, slim, sharp-eyed, with a confident gait, his skin smooth, his voice deeper than she remembered. Zara's hand flew to her mouth. Her knees buckled slightly. Obina held her fast. The man approached slowly, hands folded, eyes misting. "I told you not to look back that day," he said. Zara's eyes widened. "You'd her for a moment." Her body tensed as if trying to fight off a wave of something she didn't want to feel. Then the tears came. Not the soft kind, the kind that make your body shake, the kind that sound like truth being pulled from the chest. Albina didn't say anything. He just sat beside her and placed his hand on her back. She leaned into him, a mother, strong for too long. They sat like that for a long while, surrounded by silence, fruit, and the echo of a kindness once forgotten but never truly lost. The air in the town hall was still. Even the flies seemed to pause. Zara stood frozen, her hands still covering her mouth, her knees threatening to give way. In front of her stood a man, polished, tall, wrapped in the success she could never dream of. But his eyes, those eyes, they hadn't changed. He stepped forward and gently removed her hand from her lips. Lowering it slowly, "It's me," he said, voice soft. "The boy with torn sandals. The one you fed." Zara shook her head slowly, disbelief dancing in her tears. "That was so long ago. You couldn't have remembered me." "I did," he said, emotion cracking his words. "Every single day." The crowd watched in stunned silence. Even Josie was speechless. Obina looked between them, confusion melting into awe. The man turned to the audience and spoke loudly, voice steady now. "This woman gave me her last note when I was just a hungry schoolboy. She didn't ask my name. She didn't ask what I'd become. But I never forgot her." He looked back at Zara. "You planted a seed in someone you thought you'd never see again, but that seed grew. I went to school because of that meal. I studied harder because of that act. I became a man because someone like you believed I was worth feeding." Zara's lips trembled. She held onto the bench to keep herself grounded. I didn't even know your name." The man smiled warmly. "Chinidu. My name is Chinidu, and I came to give back everything you gave me." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside were keys, 3 of them. He handed them to her one by one. "This is for a new home already built, already in your name," Zara gasped. "This is for the food stall in your new market space, fully stocked, ready to open." Obina stepped closer, eyes wide. "And this," he held up the last key, his eyes misting over, "is to the office of the Mama Zara Foundation. You'll be the face of feeding futures. Just like you did for me." The room erupted. Some clapped, others wiped their eyes. Zara simply stood there, stunned. "I have no words," she whispered. "You don't need words," Chinidu said, kneeling in front of her. "You just need to know you've changed a life. And that life is here to change yours back." Zara broke down. The tears returned, this time not from pain, but from relief, from release, from the overwhelming weight of decades of struggle now carried by someone else, even if just for a moment. Obina helped her sit, and Josie muttered under her breath, "Na, wa." "Oh," someone next to her snapped. "You accused her of stealing, and she fed the nation." Zara held the keys to her chest, still shaking. The new house smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. It stood tall on a quiet street, modest but beautiful. White walls, green trim, a small veranda with space for potted plants. A water tank stood in the back. No leaks, no cracked floor, no rusted nails. Zara stepped inside slowly, bare feet brushing smooth tiles. The walls were lined with framed photos of her stall, the council event, and one black and white image of her husband, smiling in his church attire. Obina placed their only suitcase in the corner of the bedroom. His jaw still hadn't fully relaxed since they arrived. "Mama," he said, spinning around, "we have a flush toilet." She chuckled, "A real one." "Your father would have said, it's witchcraft." They both laughed. Outside, Chinidu waited in his SUV. He had promised not to overwhelm them, but he returned every Sunday with more food hampers, medicine, job offers for Obina, and new clothes. But Zara always gave half away. Every Friday, she packed warm food from her new kitchen and delivered it to the church, to the same children who sat by the broken school fence where she once left yam bundles. Her new stall opened soon after, named Zara's Firepot, painted orange with white text and a long wooden counter. But something was different. Zara didn't take money on Fridays. She called it Kindness Day. No charge, no questions, just food and dignity. When Chinadu heard, he came by quietly and watched from the car. People in line, widows, laborers, children, walked away with wrapped plantain and smiles they hadn't worn in years. He stepped out. "Mama, why are you doing all this?" he asked. Zara wiped her hands and looked at him gently. "Because I remember the hunger that doesn't show on the face, the one that hides behind pride." He paused, watching her hand over a bowl to a boy in torn uniform. "I wanted to build you a big restaurant, staff, AC, waiters, all that." Zara shook her head. "I don't want marble floors. I want people who come here to still feel me in." The food, Chinadu nodded slowly. "You're a rare woman." She wiped her brow with the corner of her wrapper. "I'm just a fire that stayed lit when the world wanted to blow it out." Later that week, Obina received his first paycheck from a mechanic workshop Chinidu connected him to. He came home dancing, waving the envelope. "Mama, I fixed 4 cars today. They said my hands are fast." Zara hugged him, proud but quiet. That night, she sat outside under the stars. The breeze moved gently. Somewhere, a baby cried. Somewhere else, a man laughed. She looked at her hands, still darkened, still rough, and smiled. She didn't want new hands. She just wanted them to keep giving. The drums started before sunrise, not the loud, chaotic kind, but the traditional ones. The type that call ancestors to listen, that make elders adjust their seats and children pause mid. Something was happening in the village, and everyone knew. Zara stood in front of her mirror, tying her headscarf with practiced care. Her wrapper was new, yellow with deep blue stars, a gift from the Women's Council. Her cheeks were powdered, softly, and a touch of red lined her lips. Obina peeked in. "They've started gathering," she nodded. Her heart raced. Outside, beneath the giant mango tree near the church, rows of chairs had been arranged. A banner hung across the wooden frame, honoring the mother of many. Zara Meh. The councilmen were seated. Choir members hummed softly. The children from the school, the same ones who once scavenged leftover akara, wore white shirts and blue trousers, holding tiny flags. Chinadu stood at the front, adjusting the microphone. When Zara arrived, the entire crowd rose to their feet. She walked slowly, with quiet grace, not pride, never pride, but presence. The same woman who once slept hungry, now welcomed like a queen. A woman from the Ministry of Women Affairs came to the podium. "Today, we recognize not just a woman, but a story, a seed, a flame." Mama Zara fed more than stomachs. She fed futures, and the nation watched. Applause thundered through the gathering. Zara stepped forward, trembling. A gold pin was placed on her wrapper, a certificate placed in her hands. Still, she said nothing, until Chinidu approached with the small box. Everyone watched. He took her hand, knelt, and looked up into her eyes. "I called you Mama when I had no one, but today, I want to call you that forever. Not just in words, but in legacy, in life, in everything I build from here." Gasps echoed. He opened the box, but it wasn't a ring. Inside were house documents, land titles, and a signed partnership in the foundation, officially naming her co-director. Zara's knees gave way. She dropped to the ground, not from shock, but gratitude. She wept, openly, freely, with no shame. The children ran to her, hugging her legs. Obina came, lifting her gently, wiping her tears. Chinadu held her hand and spoke one final line to the crowd. "She gave me life when I was invisible. Today, I give her a name that can never be forgotten." The choir began singing, and in the middle of the crowd, with her wrapper fluttering, tears on her cheeks and dust on her feet, Zara danced, slowly at first, then with joy, then with fire, the kind of dance only the healed understand. "Even forgotten kindness can build kingdoms," she whispered, as she danced barefoot on new ground. "Never forget, one small act of kindness can echo forever." Tell us, what part touched your heart the most?